morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Saturday, March 15th, 2025. This is the Excerpt. Today, shutdown averted. Plus, we take a closer look at the economy amid spooked markets and consumers, and more foreign-born people call the U.S. home today than ever in history. The government shutdown has been avoided. The Senate yesterday evening passed a bill to keep the government funded through September. A partial shutdown otherwise would have begun at midnight. 10 Democrats joined with all but one of their GOP colleagues on a key procedural vote to advance the bill yesterday afternoon, but far fewer Democrats joined Republicans to vote for the bill itself, which shifts some money toward President Donald Trump's priorities and increases his power over spending. The vote came amid a brewing trade war between Trump and international allies and the administration's mass layoffs of federal workers, and where any additional signs of U.S. political dysfunction would have only added to economic uncertainty. Still, consumer confidence is sinking as that economic uncertainty continues. I spoke with USA Today economy reporter Rachel Barber to help make sense of where things stand right now. Hey there, Rachel.
Hi, Taylor.
Thanks for hopping on this, Rachel. So lots of, I think, concerns and anxiety around some of these economic points right now. But let's start by talking about the markets. I know stocks inched back up on Friday, but it was really a nightmare week beforehand, Rachel. What happened here? Was this, I guess, mostly a reaction to uncertainty?
It's complicated, but it seems that way. One of the sources that I spoke to said that markets are like people. They like stability and certainty. And right now, investors are worried what tariffs will mean for their supply chains and their businesses overall. As we know, tensions have been rising between the US and its top three trading partners, Canada, Mexico, China. And this week, Trump escalated the risk of a trade war with the European Union. He threatened to impose a 200% tariff on alcohol coming to the US from Europe unless the EU drops its plans for a tax on American whiskey, which, by the way, itself was part of an EU retaliation strategy after Trump put a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports to the US.
All right, so what about inflation? This was something Trump promised to lower on day one. Has he made good on any of that promise?
I'm not an expert on inflation, but I can tell you that it eased more than was expected in February. But economists told my colleague Paul Davidson that the reprieve will probably be short-lived because those import tariffs we just spoke about are expected to drive prices up.
Well, and as I said at the top, Rachel, consumers, just average Americans, are clearly worried in this moment, or at least puzzled. I know we have some new indicators on consumer confidence. What can you tell us here? Just how spooked are consumers right now?
Well, first, to add some context, really simply put, consumer sentiment is a measure that we and economists use to understand how people are feeling about their finances and the economy, both in the short and the long term. And it matters because how people feel about the economy affects how much they spend and how much they save. So now we have some new data. According to a new University of Michigan study, consumer sentiment in the US has fallen 3 months in a row, meaning people are feeling more pessimistic. The survey reported consumer sentiment is at 57.9, which is the lowest it's been since the end of 2022, and it's down 22% from December last year before Trump took office.
Wow. All right. So we've had this recession word swirling around for a few weeks now, Rachel. Considering all of this, what we've been talking about, I mean, how likely is a recession in the coming months? What does that word actually mean? And how would that land with Americans?
Well, yeah, honestly, Taylor, I'm not in a position to make that call if we're headed into a recession, but I can tell you who is. For the last several decades, it's been up to 8 economists who serve on something called the Business Cycle Dating Committee, which is within the National Bureau of Economic Research, to formally decide when the US is in a recession. And that organization defines a recession as a, quote, significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy lasting more than a few months. So it's a pretty broad definition, but the committee considers several factors when making that determination. Consumer spending is one of them, but they also look at real income, payroll employment, industrial production, and GDP. So far, they've not made any decisions that we are in a recession, and Trump and his administration say that we're rather just in a period of economic transition. When he was asked on Fox News Sunday about whether the US would experience a recession in 2025, he didn't exactly rule it out. Instead, he just said that he hates to predict things like that.
All right. It feels like a critical next few weeks. Rachel Barber covers the economy for USA Today. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Have a good one.
Elon Musk this week reposted a message on X, formerly Twitter, writing, quote, "Stalin, Mao, and Hitler didn't murder millions of people. Their public sector employees did," unquote. Musk's repost, which now appears to be deleted, drew furious reactions from a labor union and the Anti-Defamation League. Lee Saunders, for instance, president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, said that America's public service workers chose making communities safe, healthy, and strong over getting rich, adding, quote, "They are not, as the world's richest man implies, genocidal murderers," unquote. The Anti-Defamation League, a nonprofit that seeks to combat anti-Semitism, said the post was deeply disturbing. Musk's repost comes at a time when his crackdown on the federal government has spurred Tesla takedown protests, with Tesla owners being harassed and multiple dealerships vandalized across the country. Back in January, Musk also sparked controversy with a gesture that drew comparisons to the Nazi salute, while speaking at an inaugural event for President Donald Trump. More foreign-born people call the U.S. home today than ever in history, according to new federal data. I spoke with USA Today national correspondent Trevor Hughes for more. Hey there, Trevor.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for hopping on, Trevor. So let's just start with the numbers. I mean, what did you find here about foreign-born folks in the United States?
What we're seeing, this is reflected frankly, in the election, but the new results from the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics suggest that there are now something like 53 million foreign-born people living in the United States. That's almost 16% of the overall population. Now, that's a combination of people here legally and people who cross the border illegally or people who have overstayed their visas.
Yeah, I mean, that means more than 1 in 7 people are foreign born, many of whom these are folks we live and work alongside every day. Trevor, I mean, how does this compare with past eras of foreign born Americans? Do we have any numbers on this?
This is actually the highest level of foreign-born Americans that we've ever had in this country, at least in modern history, going back to the sort of late 1800s when we started keeping good statistics on this. And again, this is self-reported by the BLS and the Census Bureau. It reflects, I think, a thing that many Americans thought about when they were making a decision in the presidential election. President Trump campaigned very strongly on this idea of closing the border. And what we are now seeing from the statistics is that there are more people who are from somewhere else than have ever been in this country.
And you touched on this, Trevor, but does the survey distinguish between people who arrived with or without legal authorization? Do we know the breakdown here? And in terms of how many foreign-born residents have received documentation?
This is a long-running sort of issue in America, which is that we don't actually have a really good sense of how many people are living here without legal permission. That is something the Trump administration actually plans to address. They have been trying to push this on the census for a number of years, and I expect that you're going to see stronger efforts in the coming years to really put a number on those folks so that the Trump administration can follow through with its campaign promises to deport people who are living illegally here in the United States.
Trevor, we hear a lot about how immigrants impact the economy. Where do the arguments here stand at this moment in time on, I guess, either side of the aisle? And what do the numbers tell us about the impact of foreign-born workers on economics?
This is the thing. Americans aren't having kids. And our population growth at this point is almost entirely because immigrants are coming to this country. That means more people to work, which actually keeps wages down, especially in the industries that immigrants are traditionally employed, especially if you're unskilled, right? Landscaping, labor, farming, fishing. And so that helps keep wages down, which is obviously good for employers and is good for consumers. But if you're an American-born worker, you may not feel that way. You may be frustrated that people who are willing to work for less than you are working alongside you, and that depresses your wages.
All right, this is another interesting piece from you, Trevor. Listeners can go find the full version with a link in today's show notes. Trevor Hughes is a national correspondent with USA Today. Thanks, Trevor.
You bet. Good to be here.
Former hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs appeared in court once again yesterday, pleading not guilty. This time for a new indictment stating that he had forced employees to work long, inhumane hours and threatened to punish those who did not assist in his alleged 2-decade-long sex trafficking scheme. The indictment follows numerous lawsuits and allegations of rape, sexual assault, physical abuse, and similar claims over the course of 3 decades, all of which Combs has pleaded not guilty to. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. On the campaign trail, President Trump pledged to once and for all dismantle the Department of Education, a long-standing goal of conservative Republicans. That promise took shape this past week with the layoff of 50% of the department's staff. The question is, will that lead to better education in America?
Tracking educational progress going forward in order to test the hypothesis that these cuts that the Trump administration has moved forward with are working, that's going to be a challenge because the folks who are in charge of engaging in that research are no longer going to be at the department.
That's USA Today education reporter Zach Shermley. Listen in tomorrow beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern Time when my colleague Dana Taylor sits down with Zach to talk through the impacts of these latest moves of the Trump administration to rein in Washington's footprint in the lives of millions of Americans. And thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back Monday with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.